Thanks so much for being here. I want to first acknowledge that I'm with two incredible local community leaders. Lise Vaugeois, who is the member of the Virtual Parliament for Thunder Bay Superior North. Thanks so much for being here, Lise. And our candidate for Thunder Bay Rainy River, Yoksem Wan. Thanks so much for being here. So we were here to celebrate National Indigenous People Day yesterday. Today, I want to talk about what is a major concern that I heard across the community, wherever I went. One of the major things that people are worried about is there's nowhere for people to find a place that they can afford to rent. There's simply nowhere for people to find. It is a really desperate situation. Vacancy rates in Thunder Bay are at 1%. That means if you lose your home, or if you've got to move, you're facing potentially being on the streets because there's simply no availability. And that should not be the way things are. People should not have to live in fear that they can't find a place that they can rent. There's nothing available in a city like Thunder Bay. That should not be a fear that people have. But the reality is that's what's going on. We've had 8 years of Prime Minister Trudeau who's promised to make things better. When you ask people, things have actually gotten worse. It's harder and harder to find a home that people can afford. Rents are going up, and there's simply no availability. And then we've got conservatives who really just want to put more money in the pockets of rich developers. They don't have a plan to make things better. We have a plan. What we're proposing is we need to encourage and incentivize building more homes that people can afford. That's what we want to do. Ultimately, we need to build more homes quickly that more people can afford. And then we're going to do that. The plan to do that is to waive the GST to incentivize the building of rental buildings, rental homes that are affordable. Unlike the Liberals who promised to do the same thing years and years ago but haven't delivered, they have no strings attached. They just want to waive the GST and just incentivize building. We want to incentivize building that actually creates buildings that people can afford. Like I said, you Democrats are here for you. We want to build more homes that you can afford. We want to build them quicker. We want to make sure people can actually find a place that's in their budget for their families. Donc aujourd'hui, on va parler de la crise du logement. Ici à Thunder Bay, c'est vraiment difficile. C'est effectivement impossible de trouver un appartement à louer. Et ça, c'est pourquoi on propose une autre solution. Après 8 ans de Justin Trudeau, la situation s'empirait. C'est plus difficile maintenant de trouver quelque chose comme un appartement à louer qui est abordable. C'est impossible. Et les conservateurs veulent seulement donner plus d'argent aux ultra riches au lieu de vraiment régler le problème. Notre solution, c'est d'enlever la TPS pour encourager le développement, la fabrication, de bâtir plus de logements abordables. Donc, ça c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire, bâtir plus de logements abordables pour les familles. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
We're going to do one question, one follow-up. We'll start with James from Net News Legend.
Sounds good.
Good morning. Welcome to Thunder Bay.
Thanks so much.
One of the things I find in this is that I was up in KI last week, and they just opened the new school, and the contractor basically, when everyone was talking about we need lawyers and teachers and all this, he said we need construction people. This school was built by people with their hands. And so when I'm thinking of housing, people have to build those homes, and that's usually going to be companies. So how does a government program end up getting around the fact that somebody's going to have to build that actual house?
Well, what we've heard from experts, they've said that the developers are ready to build, but they need incentives to build this purposeful rental. Right now what we're seeing is a lot of condos being built, but not a lot of rental building. And to incentivize that, the experts, housing experts, as well as the builders themselves have said, if there's an incentive for us, we'll do it. It'll make sense for us and we'll commit to it. And so what we're proposing is an incentive with strings attached. Unlike the Liberals, who've actually really done nothing, they promised to do something similar, but haven't done it for years and years. Since 2017, they made the promise, haven't delivered. Unlike the Conservatives, that don't really have a plan to build affordable housing, what we're proposing is, this is a plan that experts have said will work, that will incentivize building more homes that people can afford, but also that will be tied with a definition of affordability, so that it's not just building more homes for people, but also homes that families can afford.
You said that the Liberals keep making promises and not delivering. The criticism that the Conservatives have is the NDP's holding them up to do that. How would you respond?
Well, we look at what the track record has been since we've used our power to force the government to deliver. We've delivered childcare, or we've delivered childcare legislation. The childcare that's helped so many families, there was nothing to make it permanent. We've actually just delivered childcare legislation to make it permanent. We've delivered Dental care for kids under 12. 300,000 children under 12 have received dental care. By the end of this year, we've got the money in the budget for dental care for seniors, for people living with disabilities and children 18 and under. That is millions of people in our country that will get free dental care because of what we forced this government to do. These are all things that the Liberals had voted against. In fact, Liberals and Conservatives voted against the dental care program. Now it's happening. The Liberals and Conservatives had no plan to make the child care commitments permanent. We forced them to do that. We brought in paid sick days at the federal level. That was never something the Liberals wanted to do. We forced them to deliver. We made it happen. So if you look at the track record, the Democrats have delivered. We've used our power to make this government do more for people. And there's a lot more that needs to be done, but we're proud that we've used our power in a way that has given people a break, that has lightened the burden in a little way by doubling the GST rebate. More than 10 million Canadians receive more money in their pockets. All of these things were only possible because we forced the government to deliver.
It's the CBC.
Right. So one thing that comes to mind when you talk about this policy is the fact that companies actually get an input tax credit on the GST. So they actually pay far less GST than ordinary people who do not have businesses. So I'm wondering how much of an incentive this is really going to be. And I'm also wondering, given that by reducing the GST on expenses, you're reducing government revenue, and so in a sense, by if the more successful your plan is, the more you reduce GST revenue. And I know you're the party that likes to spend money on social programs and healthcare and that kind of thing. And so I guess it's a two-part question. How much of an incentive is this really, given the input tax credit? And, how do you plan to account for the lack of the drop in revenue if you're actually successful?
Sure. We've met with builders and developers, and they've said this will encourage them, this will incentivize them. So directly from those that actually do this work, they've said that this will help. And housing experts have said this is something that we're working to call for. So the Liberals acknowledge that, and they promised it in 2017, but haven't delivered. It's been years and years now. In 6 years, they promised to do the exact same thing. The difference between us and the Liberals is, one, we'll do it, but secondly, we've also said this should be tied to definitions of affordability to make sure that it's actually building rental for people that people can actually afford. So that's the first part. The second part is, this is an investment, so this will cost, but this is an investment that we need to make. Given the vacancy rate in a city like Thunder Bay being at 1%, we can't afford not to have it. It's also an economic incentive. If people don't have a place to live, how can people come to the city? How can new workers come to the city? How can people come here and build a life if there's nowhere for people to rent, nowhere for people to live? So it's also it's not just important because people need a place to live. It's also an economic driver. So it is an investment. It will have a cost. We've talked about other ways to increase revenue, and we recently proposed having the richest companies in our country contribute more fairly. That companies that have a massive gap between what the CEO earns and what the worker in that company owns, those companies can afford to contribute a bit more. So we propose plans to increase revenue in a prudent and responsible way. At the same time, we'll make investments, and we've got to invest in building more homes that people can afford.
Yeah, if I can just add a follow. You mentioned that we need a definition of affordability. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on what your definition of affordability would be under this program.
Yeah, one of the definitions that we're looking at is 80% of average market rent. That's been a proposal that seems to bring down the rent significantly. That would be a definition of affordability that would lower significantly the cost of rent in those buildings to make it very affordable. But we're also very open to hearing from other definitions and other experts around what that definition should be. That's one that we're proposing, but again, we're open to improving that, and if there's other evidence about a better definition, we're open to that as well.
What about your opinion?
Sure.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Merci, Radio-Canada. Je voulais savoir, donc vous avez mentionné que votre parti a contribué à la mise en place de ces programmes sociaux. Est-ce que vous avez fait cette proposition au gouvernement fédéral? Est-ce que vous avez parlé de votre idée? Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que eux pourraient prendre en considération et mettre en place sous votre pression?
Donc, le gouvernement libéral a déjà promis de faire quelque chose de similaire en 2017. Donc, ils ont déjà promis de faire ça. Donc, ce qu'on fait, c'est de mettre la pression pour livrer la marchandise, pour faire ce qu'ils ont déjà promis de faire, avec un autre élément. On ajoute une définition d'abordabilité pour s'assurer que les investissements qu'on fait bâtir des immeubles où les gens peuvent se permettre de payer les loyers aussi. Donc on ajoute un autre élément, ce que les libéraux n'ont pas fait, mais ils ont déjà promis de faire la même chose, mais ils n'ont pas livré la marchandise, ils ne l'ont pas fait. Donc ça c'est pourquoi on utilise notre position pour mettre la pression pour qu'ils puissent agir. Et on a fait ça dans le passé avec des bons résultats.
Donc, vous parlez d'abordabilité, de logements abordables. Ici, je ne sais pas si vous avez visité, il y a beaucoup de campements qui sont érigés dans la ville. C'est la population générale, de autochtones urbains. Est-ce que vous pensez que votre plan pourra les aider eux?
On a un plan séparé pour aider la communauté autochtone et on est tellement fiers de ça. On a forcé le gouvernement d'ajouter pour la première fois dans le budget un plan pour bâtir du logement spécifiquement pour la communauté autochtone qui vit dans des réserves. Ça veut dire la communauté autochtone qui habite dans des régions rurales, des villes urbaines, donc des centres urbains, des municipalités et aussi dans les communautés loin des centres urbains. Donc ça c'est un programme pour le logement pour et par la communauté autochtone. C'est quelque chose qu'on a forcé le gouvernement de faire. On a forcé le gouvernement de s'engager à 4 milliards de dollars pour ce programme. Donc c'est spécifiquement pour bâtir plus de logements pour les communautés autochtones dans les villes, dans la communauté, dans des réserves.
For the 99.9 debate.
Sure. Housing tied extremely close to the province. You have your provincial counterpart here. You mentioned you'd been able to really, if you will, put leverage on the Liberal government to bring forward things like, care, pushing for pharmacare. Is there, considering the close ties and the similar problems that provinces are facing, are you planning on bringing this potentially to the provinces to add more weight or more wood to that fire because obviously they've pushed in the past and gotten certain things through various healthcare bills. Is this a potential avenue that the NDP was willing to take? And if so, has anything kind of come to that season?
So the problem they're up against when it comes to housing, it's impacting people so badly. People are really struggling with the cost of housing, with the unavailability of places to rent in a city like Thunder Bay. Things are so bad that it's going to require all levels of government to step up. So absolutely, municipalities, provincial governments have to work together, and the federal government has to work with them to deliver more housing. There's no question about it. What we're proposing is something that can be done at the federal level that would incentivize building homes that are affordable, building more homes quickly. So we're going to continue to push the federal government to act. But the federal government needs to work with the provincial governments as well. And here in Ontario, it's clear, the Democrats have raised this issue provincially again and again, that the provincial government is not acting quick enough to respond to how bad things are when it comes to housing. That the costs are so high, that there's nothing available for families. And so Lise Morit, as a leader, and the entire New Democrat team provincially are pushing to say, yes, we need housing. The Premier has a power to act and is not acting. So we would encourage the Premier to act. We're going to encourage the Prime Minister to work with provinces. This is something very serious, and families expect all levels of government to respond to their needs.
Okay, very good. We'll go to TV.
TV News, Mike Lang, thank you for joining us. In your vision, how long do you expect this plan to get executed? How long will it take?
So this is a plan that can be implemented immediately. This is about making a commitment to waive the GST to build more homes faster. And that can be done right now. The government could make an announcement and say we're going to waive the GST for building more homes quickly and ensure that there's a definition of affordability, and that can happen right away. So to highlight how it could have happened right away, the Liberals promised to make this happen in 2017. So this could have happened 6 years ago. So there's nothing holding back the government. We're putting pressure on them to act because this needs to be done yesterday. And so we're encouraging them to act today.
Follow up, yeah. How does increased inflation rate, how does that affect the execution of this plan as well?
Well, it really means that we need to offer incentives quickly because the cost of building has gone up. That is a legitimate concern with the cost of living and inflation going up has directly impacted the ability to build more, especially with inflation and interest rates going up. So this type of incentive is needed more than ever. It was needed 6 years ago, but it's needed even more now to incentivize building more homes quickly, and particularly to build homes that are affordable for people to rent.
For the Ian from
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I'm wondering if you think these kinds of incentives are really enough to tackle like the deep undersupply of housing we have. We're seeing that the federal government's programs are not even creating the number of houses or units they were planned to create. My impression is the federal government used to build affordable housing itself, and it's gotten out of that game. So does federal government specifically itself need to step in and build housing units itself to reach the targets we need to see?
Well, absolutely. Let's be clear. This is one piece of the solution, but there's a lot more that's needed. And what we really need is to approach the problem of making sure people can find a home in a lot of different ways. Incentivizing private development, yes, we have to do that, and that's what this plan is. That's a part of the solution. It has to be part of the solution. But as you mentioned, Canada used to be very much involved in building homes that were affordable. Some of the first homes that people bought in post-war period were homes that were built by the government, and CMHC was very actively involved in building those homes, building cooperatives, building non-market housing, which is also part of the solution. If we want to build a housing market that works for Canadians instead of working for billionaires, we have to change the way the housing market is looked at. And that means a lot more non-market housing, looking at cooperatives and not-for-profit housing. It also means incentivizing private developers to build more. That's absolutely part of the solution. That means ensuring we've got more rental, not just places for people to purchase, but people also need a place to rent in the meantime if they're going to live somewhere temporarily, or if they need to save up money to eventually buy, they need to have a place they can afford to rent that gives them enough money left over to save up. So these are all things that need to be part of the solution. It's something that we can fix, but it's going to take a really concerted effort and a really focused effort towards solving the problem, which is there is a market that's been designed to make people lots of money, and it's not been designed for families to actually find a place that they can afford. Follow?
Yeah, so I mean, you're highlighting this pitch policy publicly. Can you say, have you had a direct discussion with the Prime Minister or with the PMO about this? And if so, what was the result of that conversation?
We've had conversations about the importance of acting quickly on housing. I've asked questions in question period, and I've had conversations directly with the Prime Minister on it. We found that with those conversations, we also need to ramp up public pressure. So we use a two-pronged approach. I speak directly to the Prime Minister, tell him we need to get this done, then I also ramp up the pressure publicly. This is what we're doing today, to talk about a solution that would work, one solution of many that are needed, but one concrete thing that experts have called for, that the developers themselves have admitted would work, and this will actually help us build more homes quickly. We need to do this and a lot more to really solve this problem.
Yeah. I'm from the St. Paul area originally. We have a major problem with having enough lots for homes. And that's the big situation over there. I wonder if you want to make any comments on trying to get more lots.
Thank you for the question. It really highlights how the problem that we're up against as a nation is really multifaceted. There's a lot of different problems. There's just not enough availability in some communities. In some communities, it's a combination of availability and affordability, and those problems